I just needed a break, And so we're back. I may take some more time off for Christmas, but I want to do a show and just talk about some things I've been reading about that I've found interesting. I've been reading this book by William Federer called Change to Chains. And he's a great world historian. Like Dave Barton, he's more of an American historian. William Federer is a world historian, and he's just got so much knowledge and information. Like, watch him on YouTube. It's amazing. This guy has more facts just in his head than I've ever seen anyone in my life. So we'll get into some of these things I want to talk about. So in relation, we'll talk about civilizations today and how they kind of cycle, and they do go through a cycle. And so let's get into some of this. So far, there's been about 6,000 years-ish of recorded history, okay? From the Sumerian cuneiform on clay tablets in modern Iraq to the markings on leather and wood to the modern web page. These records date back to 4000 BC, and then add 2000 AD, we get around 6,000 years. That's just 60 people living 100 years back to back. So if you word it like that, it doesn't seem like that long. It's long, but it doesn't seem like that long. William Durant said, "A great civilization is not conquered from without until it has destroyed itself from within." So true. Societies die from within. The breakdown is commonly moral, economic, and civil. So the civilizations will go through these stages, right? Excuse me. So out of the chaos and disorder, a strong leader will rise up. He'll begin to fight and conquer, gain leadership, and he'll be the leader. He's the strong, the new big boss. The civilization will flourish, and the leadership does well at managing the nation's laws and assets. Then later, self-indulgent leaders who are proud and corrupt and think their power will last forever, or in America's case, they stay in power for generations. Think of some of our politicians that have been in office for 30 or 40 years. And they only leave power when they die. That's not the way it was intended to be. It was supposed to be serve a couple terms and then move on. Let someone else do it. So that way you're in touch with real life, what real people are going through. That's the point. So think of it like this, like the self-indulgent leaders. You have an impoverished immigrant grandfather who works hard and builds a business. He sends his son to college, and his son takes over the business, and it flourishes. Later, a lazy, entitled grandson then takes over the business and squanders the fortune because he didn't work for it. It was handed to him. So it's important that we have leadership that's been on the ground, been in the dirt, Okay. In hard times, people will work hard. But as we prosper and things get easier, people begin to get lazy. And they lose morals. They cast off their restraints, and they indulge in luxuries. We're seeing a lot of this today in instant gratification. Then they move to the welfare state while piling up large amounts of debt. We're seeing some of this. We're seeing people actually do these exact same things that this book's talking about. Things are easy right now. So it's easy to be lazy and give responsibility to the government or give responsibility to someone else. And the morals are going away. And our restraints are being cast off, and we're indulging in luxuries and think of our cell phones. You can just indulge in a cell phone all day and not talk to anybody, not have any relationship with anybody. And you kind of have a pseudo relationship on social media, and you can exist on your phone, and that's a luxury, In the United States and some of these bigger countries that are more wealthy, not everybody has one. We're probably getting to a point where most, even third world nations have cell phones, but it's a luxury, Let's put government officials in that want to give us everything free. Let's go into a welfare state and pile up debt. It's not a good way to go. It has consequences. It's even common for people to weaken the body. They'll use things such as a poor diet, promiscuity, and drugs, self-indulgence. They take away their restraints. They don't have any morals or anything, All right, so there are two types of power in government. There's the concentrated power, which is the king, and a monarch full of power and total control. And then we've got the separated powers. So it's the powers of the king giving to different branches elected by the people. That's a republic. That's what America is. It's not a democracy. It's a republic. We've talked about these things before. At the Tower of Babel in the Bible, God separated the concentrated powers. Okay? And here's how the cycle goes. It'll go through concentrated power to separated powers, and then back to concentrated powers. And here's an example of how we've seen it in America. The Revolutionary War, to the founding of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and then we're about to go back to concentrated powers if we vote ourselves into a socialism, communism style government. So right now we are exiting the separated powers. You can see in these pseudo impeachment hearings how the House has just hijacked the impeachment process, and they just invent their own way of doing things, and they don't let any of the Republicans really get involved. It's all been a joke. And if you know anything about how this is supposed to go, you should be furious with what is happening in our government. They're literally not taking their responsibilities seriously. They're not taking their constituents seriously. And a handful of people on the coastal states are trying to overthrow the nation. And it's terrible. It's a terrible thing. We're watching what I'm talking about happen right in front of us if you're paying attention. So if people don't stop the cycle, we will enter the tyranny phase again. That's how it works. So we, the people, with our votes and with our calling our senators and with writing them letters or emails or whatever and talking with our neighbors and communicating and using social media the way it's supposed to be and trying to keep the press honest, that's how we stop this. You know, the more power the government has, the less freedom the people have. Think about that when we want to give them health care, when we want DMV health care. Think about that when you want the government to have all control of all these businesses and regulations and programs. The more you give the government, the less free we are. And rarely do they give responsibility back to the market, to the free market, to us. So the less free we are, the less free our children will be. You know, all government is a balancing act between liberty and tyranny. That's all it's doing, trying to find the right medium. And you need to be in the middle. You know, as a king creates the law and enforces it, like in the Bible, you know, the kings, the children of Israel wanted a king. And look what happened. They ended up conquered a lot. You know, a republic is frustrating and slow at making decisions by design. And it helps slow down bad policy. Think about this. You know, I sometimes get frustrated with Congress because they're so slow at what they're doing. And then I realize it's supposed to be that. Because most bills have junk in it and it's bad and they need to do rewrites. And if Congress just didn't go to work, that'd be a good thing for the nation. Government's not supposed to solve everything. They're really just supposed to protect the borders and protect the citizenry, build roads and have a post office. It's not a ton more than that. And now look what they have. They even control schools. You know, society will break down by giving up rights and freedoms for false, temporary, perceived protections. And that's what societies do a lot. It sounds like I'm talking about America, but I'm really talking about history, which is why if you know history, you'll know that history repeats itself. You know, we always struggle with trading liberty for security. Now, security is on us. I am responsible for my security and my family. Everyone should take it into their hands. I'm not saying do anything wrong or violent, but if there's you should be responsible. The buck stops with you. You know, the securest place is a prison cell where there is no liberty. And that seems to be like the democratic utopia because they want free food, free health care, no guns except for the cops that have them. You know, they want free housing. A prison is the perfect place for these people. You know, Benjamin Franklin said, "They who give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty or safety." Ronald Reagan, if we learn anything, it is that government that is big enough to give you what you want is more likely to simply take everything you have. That is servitude and not the way Americans were meant to live. I mean, think about that as we get into a voting season. A government that's big enough to give you everything you want will probably take everything you have. And we're about to vote on this topic. Woodrow Wilson said, "The history of liberty is the history of limitations. It is not the increase of it. When we resist, therefore, the concentration of power, we are resisting the powers of death, because the concentration of power is what always precedes the destruction of human liberty." So don't vote for death, right? Do the politicians running the office nowadays actually want to tax everyone and give everything away? I mean, do they know what they're doing? Do they think they're doing something good for the human race or something? Because they may have a good intention with passing a law or a bill or giving something away. But in the end, what if a corrupt politician comes in office and they can use that against you? Do the politicians want to confiscate guns from the people? Know what looming wars may be coming up that needs an armed citizenship? We don't know what's coming. And why should we let someone else make that decision for us? New powers are used for the good at the beginning, but are often turned out to damage the freedoms of the people. So true. Washington said, the usurpation through, in one instance, may be an instrument of good. It is the customary weapon by which free governments are destroyed. And the usurpation is to seize by force without legal right. So it's stealing, it's taking. So let's stand for freedom. Let's stand behind our Constitution. For almost 5,000 years, authoritarian rule has been the norm of the human condition. The United States has been one of the longest running republics ever. Most constitutions last 18 years, I believe. Time after time, people of influence have warned us to look after this republic or we would lose it. While nations like China, Venezuela are coming out of an authoritarian cycle, the United States could be entering it. People who are tired of oppression are standing up and fighting for what we have. The freedom to choose. Right now, powers are trying to reconcentrate. So I say, let's learn from history and run as far away from these type of politicians that have a socialistic outlook let's sprint away from that junk. Because it's going to be bad news bears if we do. So, hope that was fun. Thank you very much.